How's life for everybody? Okay, sometimes good, sometimes bad, bouncing back and forth from order to chaos. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. And that can be taken as a blessing or it can be taken as a curse. We live in very interesting times right now. Would everybody agree? Lots of things going on, not necessarily comfortable, both from a global standpoint, to a national standpoint, to a political standpoint, to health standpoints, all sorts of things going on that we just don't have the answers to at this point. So when we get ruffled by things that happen, there's a particular reason for it, and that's because each and every one of us has our story, our unique individual story of how life is, how I am, how things are supposed to be, and the things that are supposed to happen. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm committed to it, even though it's all based on personal opinion, and it's all based on what I've been told throughout my entire life. And it's the same thing with each and every one of you. Your perspective on life is based on what you have been told, whether it's through books and reading or from authoritative figures growing up or whatever it might be. As we go through, we develop this story, my story. It's mine and mine alone. And within that story, there are expectations, right? I expect the world to cooperate and do things that I think should be done. And people need to cooperate and be the way I think they should be. And everything needs to go according to my story. When it doesn't, my story, which is very orderly, turns into chaos. And chaos turns into uncertainty. And uncertainty turns into discomfort. And discomfort turns into expressing something that is of a negative nature or outrage of some sort. But our story is true to us. That is our reality. Now, our story goes back and forth between order and chaos. We want everything to be orderly in our life, but occasionally chaotic things happen. Why is that? Sometimes I wonder, is it just me? Am I the one that's causing all this ruckus around me? Why do things happen like they do? To get the answer to that, we have to go back to the very beginning. Now, scientifically speaking, in the beginning, there was the Big Bang. Before that, we're told, there was nothing but a vast darkness, a void, nothingness. And then the Big Bang. With the Big Bang, an immeasurable distance across the universe was filled with fire and subatomic bits of material. And it was total chaos. Nothing had a plan, nothing was in order. But after 250 million years, things began to cool down. The little subatomic particles began to congregate together and build atoms. The atoms came together to make form. The first form of which was stars in the sky. They speckled the sky for as far as you could see. The stars eventually broke up and the planets came into being. The planet Earth, more specifically. Once the Earth cooled down, the waters came and filled up for oceans and lakes and rivers. And then there was plant life within the waters. And then creatures of the sea. And then animals of the land. And then the beginning of humanity, which has evolved to the point where we are today. Isn't that amazing? Starting out in the murky waters of ocean, through plants and fishes and animals, humans evolved to everything that you see. I find that to be utterly amazing. Now, the other story is the creation story from the Bible, from the book of Genesis. And it's remarkably the same as the scientific story, even though it happened 3,500 years before science was even thought of. In the book of Genesis, it tells us in the beginning there was a void, there was nothing but chaos. God brought light to the chaos, the stars. Then the planets came into being, and then the waters, and then the plants, and then the fish, and then the animals, and then the beginning of human beings. Pretty close, even though they came from two totally different sources. One scientifically proven, another one a deep intuitive feeling within human beings. Now when we think about this, the two different stories of life, We look through the journals of history and we see that human beings' history has been one of chaos and order. Chaos and order. Chaos and order. Marching down the road of life, everything is just good, whistling a happy tune, and then all of a sudden something happens that doesn't coordinate with our story. It doesn't meet our expectations. Chaos sets in because for the first time we're experiencing something we don't know anything about. We get very nervous and we get anxious and we resist and we fight back against it. And then we through our efforts, we once again bring things into order. Now let's take a look at why this happened. Why is life like this? And we go back to the creation story in the book of Genesis with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve came into existence. Now this is a mythological story. It could be true for some. For me it's mythological, but it's rich with different insights that apply to our life today. So here's Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And let me tell you, they had a sweet deal. Any one of us in here would take that deal in a minute. They were surrounded by a forest of fruit trees. And that's all they had to do all day was walk through the beautiful Garden of Eden and do anything they want. Every need was met. It was absolute happiness as long as they didn't do one thing. And that was, you can eat from every tree in the forest, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's okay, that sounds fair. So they're moving through the Bible, or through the garden one day, and they come across the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and in the tree there is this serpent, supposedly the devil. And the devil starts to tempt them with the forbidden fruit. And Adam and Eve said, but God says we're not supposed to do that. And they go, don't mind God, he's an old fuddy-duddy. It's a meth god. He just doesn't want you to be like him. If you eat this fruit, you'll be as powerful as God, you'll be as smart as God, and you'll have total control over your entire life. So the temptation was so great, they ate of the fruit. Now, when that happened, immediately they began to see the world in a different way. And the first thing they noticed between the man and the woman is that they were different. And each one of them saw their differences as being bad. And each one of them ran off and covered themselves up. And this is the beginning in humanity of self-consciousness. And also the beginning of shame. They were ashamed of who they were and what they were. The second thing that happened is that they knew they were going to be in trouble. So they hid. So God was out looking for them, and he found them hiding behind the bushes because obviously they didn't know that God could see through bushes. But anyway, God said, what are you doing? And they said, well, we have done wrong. We've eaten the forbidden fruit. And God said, why? He said, well, the serpent told us to. And God became very angry and cast them out of the garden. That was it for them. The good deal was over. They screwed it all up. Not only that, but once outside the Garden of Eden, life became very difficult. They had to work. They had to labor. And it wasn't easy. They went from the Garden of Eden, which was totally ordered. I mean, it was wonderful, beautiful paradise. And like that, they were cast into chaos. And that began the concept of order and chaos, which is with us today. Every single day in some small degree. Sometimes the chaos is as much as going out trying to come to church and you have a flat tire. Another type of chaos is 9/11, which is still with us today to some degree. We're still struggling with figuring out why and what to do in regards to that horrible incident. Order and chaos. Now, order is when everything is going according to our story. The plan is working. It's smooth riding. Everything is going well. Chaos is exactly the opposite. That's when something comes into our life on a moment's notice sometime, It comes into our life and we are confused. We don't know what's going on. Once again, we retract, we resist, and we rebel against it. Order and chaos. Now, one of the greatest dispositions that human beings have is we want to be in control. Call us control freaks? I don't know. It's genetic. It's in our DNA. It's always been that way. We want to be in control of our lives. We want to determine what's going to happen in our lives and what isn't going to happen in our lives. And so we're constantly struggling, trying to stay in control with forces that are much greater than our own. Now, I tell you the story about Adam and Eve because it's a story of your life. It's a story of my life. It is the story of every human being who's ever been born. There was a time when we came into this world, and we were born into a Garden of Eden, so to speak. It was a paradise. We were held in loving arms. We were given every single thing we needed. Life was just grand. And then as we grew a little older and we were able to understand what was being said to us, we were given different directions. And we were given different do's and don'ts. And when we did something that we weren't supposed to do, boom, just like that, we entered a realm of chaos. It's like, what is this? Mommy always loved me. Mommy's always held me. Mommy's always gave me my bottle. And now, all of a sudden, Mommy is mad at me simply because I broke her crystal vase that she got from her great-great-grandmother. And so what? But we don't understand because when we move into that realm of chaos, oftentimes we also meet for the first time with conditional love. It appears as if mommy or daddy or somebody has withdrawn their love from us. They no longer like us, we think. We are bad. And that is the dawn of self-consciousness within us. When we reflect back on ourselves with negative notions that we are not good. So as life continues, we get a little bit older, and then chaos comes to us again. One day, we're taken off someplace, out of the nice, warm, comfortable home that we have with people that we know and loving faces. We're taken out of that home, and we're taken to school with a lot of people we don't know, and a lot of new things going on that we don't understand. I think everybody here can probably identify with one of your first days in school, first grade, when the teacher's standing in front of the room, and we're all little kids sitting at our desk, and she points to this row of letters across the top of the room, sitting on top of the blackboard, and she says, these are letters, and you're going to learn every single one of them by heart. You're going to memorize them. Chaos sets in. Wow, is she kidding? I could never do that. But we do. Day after day after day, we practice in those letters, and eventually we get them down. At last, order is restored to our lives. But then the teacher says, now I'm going to pull out some of these letters randomly, and I'm going to put them together, mix them up into what we call words, and you're going to learn lots and lots of words. Chaos sets in again. I don't know that. I'll never be able to do that. What am I going to do? But we do. And then it's sentences. And then paragraphs. And then pretty soon as we grow older, it's tests and term papers. And we get to the point where, oh my gosh, is this never going to end? From order to chaos, ping pong, back and forth, order to chaos, order to chaos. And the answer to that, no, it's never going to end. Get used to it. Chaos is inevitable. It's a part of life, essential part of life. We need chaos. So just going back to our story of Adam and Eve for a moment. God, the grand creator of the universe, God, the one that knows everything, God that has all the power, God that knows what has happened, God knows what is happening, God knows what will happen. God had to know, I suspect, that Adam and Eve were going to eat the forbidden fruit. God knew that by doing that, they would have to leave the safe sanctuary that they had been living in and experience difficulty. Because God knew they would not develop their full potential if all they did all day long was lollygag around garden and eat fruit. So it might seem a little bit cruel, but there they were. And from Adam and Eve's story, or the very first Neanderthals, or whatever it might have been, it's continued to evolve because we've met with things that challenged us, that expanded our consciousness, that developed our skills and attributes. We met with things that we had to overcome in order to continue to become all that we can be. The point is, chaos is inevitable because it's an essential part of life. And instead of resisting this, the only thing that we can do is embrace it. We move into chaos, we learn something, we use the great attributes we have to bring order back to the chaos, and we move on. Now, on the front of your bulletin, and for those of you who are watching on streaming, there's a symbol, and it's called the yin and the yang. And it is a symbol of duality and a symbol of balance. It comes from the ancient Chinese philosophy called Taoism, and it represents the polarities of life. The white is one side, the black is the other side. Now with that, we have these opposites that coordinate together. You have hot and you have cold, and we use both of those forces together to find a comfortable temperature. We have man and we have woman, both essential to the ongoing art of life, yet opposites. We have high and low, we have left and right, everything has its opposite. With us, today, this represents order and chaos. Well, one other thing I thought was quite interesting, if you look at this, just below it, there's duality. There's a man and a woman, there's white and there's black, there's kind of smart and very smart. And we even get this in the symbol, there's a little black dot in the white. That means when you're in perfect order and everything is going good, there is still a bit of chaos within you that is going to come forth. And when you're in the midst of chaos, there's the white dot, which represents order. And it's no matter how chaotic things get, you still have the power to bring forth order to what it is you're facing. So when it comes to Sandra and I, she recently took one of those ancestry tests to find out where she came from. So she knew she came from Africa, but what else was involved there? And she discovered she had some Norwegian in her. I'm Norwegian. And of course, as we all know, we all came forth from Africa, so we all have a bit of African in us. But it is that duality, that dualism of life that we need to embrace and to really respect. It's order and chaos. Now, being in my job here, I experience a lot of chaos. You know, over 5,000 people come through here every week for one reason or another. Everything's happening, and yet there's chaos within the staff, myself included. That's because we all have our own particular story. We all have the story of this is how it should happen in this church. This is the way this should be. This is the way that should be. And we're all moving forward trying to make our story happen. So we have to rally together and put some order in it. Okay, let's bring everybody's story together and we'll pull out that which works. And so we abide by that until somebody new starts. And they don't know all this stuff. And every time they turn around, they're running into a wall. Or they're doing something that everybody else gets flipped out about. Doesn't he know that we don't do it that way? So I didn't know we don't do it that way. How's he supposed to know? So it's that chaos that we really can revel in. When you're facing a challenge or you're facing a problem, you know your nervous system is wired to handle that. It is wired to handle chaos. It was there in the beginning. It'll be there in the end because that is the energy, that is the movement, that is the balance of life that takes us forward to greater things. Now, I personally believe that the grand vision God has for this planet Earth is to have a place of peace, harmony, and love. And we are all volunteers in that effort. We're co-creating with God a planet that is kind, a planet that has love and compassion, a planet that's in harmony with all of nature, and a planet that each and every one of us can utilize our attributes to move a little bit closer to that goal. There's nothing to be alarmed about when challenges arrive or when chaos sets in, because we just have to understand and know beyond any doubt that if there's chaos, it moves into order. That's the natural way of life. You're currently facing a problem or a challenge. I'm not here to say it's easy. I'm not here to say that you can just skip through it with no emotions at all. What I am saying is, with confidence, you'll continue on your path and you move beyond the strong winds and the storms that have come into your life and enter into the light. We'll now move into meditation.